What's going on, everybody? My name's Reggie. I'm from Valdosta, Georgia, 32, and I used to be an atheist. So, just a little bit about backstory. I was born in Virginia, small town, kind of similar to where I'm at now. And my mom was kind of living really kind of rough lifestyle. And I was actually, me and my brothers and my little sister were put into foster care when I was really young. My dad ended up finding out about me kind of as I got older. I was about 5, almost 6 years old. And then he ended up going to court and getting custody of me. And then I was with him, for a while. And then in about 1995 or so, we ended up getting a mysterious call one day, and I found out my mom had actually got killed. So, shortly after that, my dad, who was in the Air Force, ended up getting stationed in Japan. So, not only was I still kind of learning who this new man was, I then ended up going to a whole nother country, getting separated from the rest of my family that I knew, to now kind of going on to a whole new horizon. So, just kind of went through a lot of different things kind of growing up. Not terrible, but you know how it is. It always seems like you're the one going through a lot of different things, and everybody else has got it easy. So, lived in Japan for about 4 years, which was actually really cool. Had a lot of different experiences there. But ended up moving from Japan to the very small town of Valdosta, Georgia, back in 2000. And being a military brat, it was a really hard transition coming back from Asia over to the rural South. And even in 2000, it was very backwoods, very country, kind of felt like I was in the 70s. So everybody hung in cliques of different races and things like that, and it was a huge transition. So I kind of secluded myself, and it was not really the best transition for me. But later on, things did get a little bit better. I love playing basketball, I love playing sports, things like that. So I kind of got into a different crew. But after 2001, when 9/11 happened, I ended up switching schools and going to a much larger school in the county, and that was another transition for me. Long story short, kind of just started growing up, kind of felt like an outsider, and never kind of really felt like I fit in. And that was a huge shift, and never really kind of felt like I was worthy, never really felt like I was enough. And maybe I'm not the only one that feels that way or felt that way. So, come 2006, 2007, I meet this beautiful young lady, and we kind of started talking, getting a little more serious. And at that time, I was an atheist. I'm talking about avid, hardcore science buff. I would preach to a stop sign that God didn't exist, right? And the lady I was kind of, talking to, kind of started dating, I guess you could call it. She was actually a Christian. And, I really started to fall for, really care for her a lot. And one day she just picked up and was like, "I'm moving," and kind of shook me a little bit. But at the end of the day, I had learned that, her faith was stronger than our relationship. And I couldn't understand that then. So fast forward to 2008, and I moved back to Valdosta because I had actually been living in Colorado Springs for about 2 years. And moved back to good old Valdosta. And I was working at Walmart, good old Wally World. And I was working there for a few months, and ended up meeting this young lady who would later be my wife. And again, similar situation. She was an avid Christian, and I was still on my whole I don't need God, don't believe in God whole tip. And in the midst of me meeting this young lady, I had a roommate, and his name was Larry. Really cool guy, a few years older than me, maybe like 6 or 7 years older than me. But he was just really patient, and he just knew how to kind of break things down. And he explained to me what I like to share to anyone listening, and it really kind of made sense to me. And instead of the normal conversation that you'd have with someone that's a Christian, he was kind of just really kind of trying to talk to me and kind of see where my head was at. And he asked me, he was like, what do you think about God, and what's stopping you from really believing? And my whole thing was something that I hear a lot of people say now, and I was so passionate about back then, was how could God exist when so many bad things are happening in the world and have happened in the past? I was always a huge history buff, and I always brought up things like the Holocaust, all the different bouts of slavery, the Indian removal, just how people can be in such avid poverty, and then of course, the personal touches, how did, if God exists, then how did he let my mother get killed, and still not even know who the person who did it was, the culprit, why did he let my cousin get killed and get drowned at that? Why did he let my uncle get stabbed and then thrown in front of a train to get ran over in a very, grotesque murder? How did he let me and all my brothers and sisters get separated? I just looked at all the things that didn't make sense in my life, and essentially blamed the same person that I didn't think existed. So in my mind, he couldn't exist if he was letting all those bad things happen. And Larry kind of explained it to me in a way that kind of broke it down, that made sense, and at least made me kind of question why I didn't believe. And what he said was this. He said, "Do you love your dad?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. Of course I love my dad." And he's like, "Well, okay, do you believe your dad has taught you the difference between right and wrong?" And of course I agreed. Of course he's taught me the difference between right and wrong. And he's like, "Okay, well, do you believe that your dad also gives you free will? He can't make you do the right things, although you know the difference between right and wrong." And I agreed. I said, "Yes, he does." And he said, "Okay, so knowing the right thing and the wrong things to do you still make the wrong decisions sometimes, or the wrong choices?" And I said, "Yes." And when I said that, he kind of paused for a second, and he looked at me and said, "Well, God, they call him the Father." He said he's really just like that. As much as you love your father and he loves you, God is the same way. And although your dad has taught you so many things throughout your life, as an adult now, you can still look back and all the things that he's taught you, the difference between right and wrong, but yet you still have the free will to make the wrong decisions. And although you may say that you blame God for all the things that go on in life, a lot of the things that go on, they're not his fault. They're the fault of other people. Those same things that you blamed him for in the past, he didn't do. Although he could have stopped it, him stepping in would then take away our free will, right or wrong. And as I sat there and thought about it for a minute, it just made a lot of sense. It made so much sense. The Holocaust, God didn't come in and kill those people. He gave free will to those who, murdered all those millions of people that long time ago. The same thing with slavery. God didn't enslave us. Man enslaved each other. Murder. God didn't come down and murder, the people that I loved. Although those things were allowed, they were all allowed because he gave us free will. The same free will we use whenever we take advantage of someone, when we know the difference between right and wrong, or steal things when we know that it's not the right thing to do, or take advantage of another person, whether it be a male or a female, when we know we can actually treat them fairly and we choose not to. And those are just some of the things that kind of made me open my eyes to at least wanting to learn more about who this God person was. And one thing that he really stressed to me was there are a lot of people that think they know who God is, but they don't know Jesus. And when he really started to kind of break down who Jesus was, that was really how I kind of came to know God in a personal level. And I don't want to, say anything bad about anybody listening to this that is not a believer or is maybe just thinking about wanting to get into learning more about Christianity. But I can't make, and neither can anyone make, anyone believe in any religion or any form of spirituality or anything along those lines that person is not prepared to make themselves. And I'm not a huge proponent of organized religion because I think that's just a social construct of man. However, spirituality, I believe, is completely different because that's just a relationship between you and the person you believe in. And my personal decision is I believe in Christ. If you look through history, there's not one person through all of history that has been talked more about, that there's more information on, that there's more facts on. And you can look that up for yourself. But one thing that I can definitely say for sure, just in my own personal experience, is now that I look back on things, hindsight, all of the negative things that I thought were hindering me from knowing God were just like stepping stones to him actually showing me that he was there, although I thought he wasn't. Because even if I go back to my relationship with my mom that I only had until I was really like a little kid before she, obviously got brutally murdered, was if she was living that lifestyle then, had I grown up, I would have resented her. So instead of growing up to be an adult and resenting the person who, was my mother, who was supposed to raise me and take care of me, he took her out of my life so that my dad could be that person. And he was stable. He was there for me. He did teach me a lot of things. He did give me that love. And then, of course, he eventually married someone else, so I had a mother figure in my life. Had I not had that experience, I would have grown up to maybe either look down on her or hate her or whoever knows what. In 2005, I tried to get into the military, tried to get into the Air Force, just like my dad. And ironically, I said I was going to use that as a last resort. But when I finally decided to do it, because I wasn't doing anything with my life after I graduated high school, I tried to go into the military and I couldn't get in. And then for so long, I blamed God for not allowing me to get in. And had he done that in 2005, I would have never met my wife in 2008. I would have never had my kids. I would have never went back to school and got my degree and then went back and got my master's. I mean, I never would have written maybe either one of my books that I've written, which is From an Atheist to a Believer, Part 1, which is available on Amazon, and Uplifting Words. So, I mean, those are things that he used in my journey to be able to get me where I am today. And now I can sit here, I can actually speak on, these platforms to be able to tell anyone that cares to listen that, if you've gone through trials and tribulations or are still going through those same trials and tribulations, it's not for nothing. Because you never know how the things you're going through now might help someone else. And, similar to those same people I used to, say were victims of God not being there, like people in the Holocaust or people that were enslaved, or thinking that people that are dealing with, going through, like the whole sex trade situation, or just people going through anything in general, being bullied or feeling less than. All those situations teach you to be stronger. It's just like a rock being weathered. That whole weathering process, it smooths you out in time, and it grows you to be the person that you are. No great person has never gone through, those trials and tribulations to grow and be a great person for nothing. I mean, that's how any great leader becomes, a person in that position, is because they've gone through so many things that they've learned how to kind of duck and dodge, bob and weave, if you may, to be able to be the kind of person that they are. I mean, I give my hats off to people that are single women or single parents, not just single women, single parents that are, great with their kids, because, they have to go through those trials and tribulations. I mean, even, people that are parents, with a significant other or a spouse, it's still tough. But I believe you have to have faith, and we all have faith in something. Even as an atheist, I had faith in myself. But I didn't really have that much faith in myself, because even then I would let myself down. There were a lot of times where I thought I could do something and I couldn't. I thought I knew something and I didn't. And, when you don't have faith in anyone but yourself, and you let yourself down, you got no backup. you got absolutely no backup at all. So, I didn't really want to make this too long, but I did at least want to kind of share my perspective and my mindset for anyone, anywhere that cares to listen. If you're going through trials, any kind of tribulations, any kind of hardships, don't give up, because you never know who's watching you. And as a good friend of mine said, sometimes you might be the only Bible that someone ever reads. And if you are a person that's positive, if you're a person that is, always striving to do the right thing, you treat people fairly, all those are things that are great. Those are all things that are in a good perspective. But no rules, no laws, no constructs or anything along those lines can ever be done or have never been created without someone creating the rules. And as crazy as it may seem that God exists, think about this. Everything that we know in life is all revolving around laws. Think about it. If you throw a ball up in the air, the law of gravity says that eventually that ball must fall down, right? Okay, man didn't make that up. There's no way man could have made gravity. The only thing we can do is witness and be a part of that law that already exists. There's some things that we just can't explain. Even though I'm a believer, there's some things I just don't know. And I don't think I'll ever know until eventually we die and go to heaven or hell or wherever you choose to go. Because at the end of the day, if you choose to believe, that's how you get to heaven. But if you don't believe, you finish the sentence. So, I just wanted to say that to say this. There is hope if you believe. And that's what I chose to do. A lot of people may consider themselves believers in a God, but they don't believe in Jesus. Those people are called deists. And there's a lot of other people. They may be Buddhists, they may be Taoists, they may be Wiccan, they may be whatever. Again, I'm not downing any of those people. That's just not what I believe. And I've said a lot of different things, but in my life, it has completely changed for the better in a very positive way, and it's something that's tangible, something I can hold on to. It's something that I can share with other people, and I don't feel guilty about it. And that's believing in Jesus because he believed in me. Personally, there's no reasonable explanation for someone going through all the things that he went through and literally died on a cross for people that literally were spitting on him and flogging him and beating him and calling him names if it wasn't for unconditional love. And you don't have to be a genius, you don't have to be a mathematician, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what unconditional love is. Because just as a parent or a brother or a sister ourselves, we know we love our kids or our brothers, our sisters, and even our friends. So if someone can make that sacrifice for people like us, that are imperfect, that don't know everything, that think we know everything. To me, it was at least worth going out and finding more about. So that was my long spiel. I hope that if anyone chooses to listen to this message in the future, that they can get something out of it in a positive way. I'm thinking about doing some kind of blog so that way I can interact with my listeners. And I think that would be kind of cool too. Maybe I can, you guys can ask questions and I just take my own perspective and kind of give it back to you guys based on what I think. Maybe do a little bit of research. I just want to make it fun for anybody that cares to listen. I want to try to do this regularly as a project that helps out other people. So I'll kind of keep you tuned in on that. If you have any other questions or anything along those lines about me personally or my ideas, my thoughts, please share them. And then hopefully we can continue to talk throughout this journey. All right, thanks, one love, and God bless.